Når kan Mason Mount sette seg på toget til Manchester? Hvordan kan en 20-årig danske med 9 Serie A-mål koste like mye som Harry Kane? Hva er egentlig strategien til John Murtough i sommer? Og hvem er det som hater deg og bildene du har hengt opp i Unos hovedkvarter? Fredrik Filtvedt.
Oi. Her var det mange store spørsmål som jeg ikke har noen gode svar på, Eivind. Hvor skal jeg begynne hen?
På det siste.
Vi har lagt ut video i sosiale medier av hvor fint kontor vi har fått oss, og hvor fine bilder vi har hengt opp på veggene. Og så kommer vi tilbake på kontoret her, Eivind, og der er det ett bilde som fortsatt henger på veggen. Så det vil si 7 knuste rammer og krøllede papirer.
Giggs var den eneste som overlevde.
Men det skal sies at han var den som røyk først, og så hang vi den opp på nytt, og så henger den der fortsatt. Så det er jo amatører på jobb da, som med dette studioet. Jeg ser at Evra-bildet bak det også ligger på gulvet, apropos.
Ja.
Så nei, vi prøvde oss på vi hadde ikke det utstyret vi trengte. Vi trodde likevel at det skulle gå, og det har det beviselig ikke gjort. Så da må vi gjøre den jobben ordentlig på nytt en annen.
Jon Martin hadde nok kost seg fælt hvis han hadde vært her nå. Det er han ikke. Han er på bobilferie med sin andre klubb, skal vi våge å kalle det.
Ja, for en mann. Jeg vet ikke om dere har sett bildene, men det er jo nok om han.
Men det er litt symbolsk at det rakner både i studio og i gangen utenfor her, fordi vi har fått veldig mange bekymringsmeldinger i innboksen om hva det er som foregår i Manchester, og jeg har gjort klar den fanfaren her. Så vi kan spille av hver gang Manchester United annonserer at nå har vi signert en ny spiller som skal spille med rød drakt neste sesong, men den kan vi ikke bruke helt ennå.
Nei, og det høres ut som du har tenkt til å bruke den veldig mange ganger i løpet av sommeren. Jeg er ikke sikker på om du får brukt den så mange ganger. Hvor mange ganger har du sett for deg?
Nei, foreløpig så må vi holde oss til den her.
Ja, så du har den klar også. Ja, det er fint.
Galgenhumor er det eneste måten å håndtere det på, men vi skal være seriøse i den episoden her, Fredrik. Vi skal ta dere med på en reise gjennom ryktebørsen og ta for oss spiller for spiller egentlig fra Mount til Høylin og Onana og så videre. Vi skal snakke med Andy Mitten om hva det egentlig er som skjer, og vi skal også høre hva som skjer rundt kvinnelaget i sommer. Så menyen er lang, vi lar fanfarene ligge, og så tror jeg vi bare skal adressere noen av de bekymringsmeldingene som har kommet inn. Vi har fått en fra Runar blant annet.
Hvordan kan vi fortsatt tro på dette prosjektet når Glazers stikker så til de grader kjepper i hjulene? Gi meg håp.
Han er ikke alene om å be om håp. Er dere bekymret for manglende aktivitet fra Uniteds side? Jeg synes det er svært frustrerende å lese om alt konkurrenter som Arsenal foretar seg, skriver Marius. Og et annet spørsmål er, virker det som Glazers er i ferd med å ødelegge dette sommervinduet også?
Ja, og det er jo gode og helt betimelige spørsmål som jeg deler jo bekymringene og frustrasjonen og så er det et eller annet med at jeg tror både jeg og litt for mange andre sitter og på en måte scroller for å oppdatere Twitter-feeden, og så håper de at for hver gang de gjør det, så skal det komme en nyhet, en god nyhet, eller en annonsering om en spiller som er klar, og det skjer jo ikke. Men det som er mest frustrerende er at mange av de spillerne vi virkelig ønsker oss, og som også har fremstått som United sine fremste overgangsmål, de ser jo ut til å være i ferd med å gå til andre klubber. Og da er det ikke rart at frykt om at United skal sitte med brødsmulene på tampen av overgangsvinduet. Det er ikke rart at den frykten brer seg. Og så tror jeg at United, for å svare litt på spørsmålet, gi meg håp. Jeg tror at United har forberedt seg ordentlig godt, stoler veldig på at Den Haag har sittet ved tegnebrettet sitt og lagd plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. Men problemet er at jeg tror at plan A og B allerede har ryket, og at den nå ser på alternativet C og D og så videre, og så opplever han at de også har fått voldsomme prislapper. Så jeg skjønner bekymringene, jeg skjønner frustrasjonen, og så tror jeg jo at det lander på beina til slutt likevel, men det er ganske vondt og vanskelig å sitte og se på det som skjer for øyeblikket, spør du meg.
Ja, Kjetil er en av de som står litt på den andre siden av gjerdet, og spør seg liksom United-fansen, de som er mest utålmodige i fotballverden.
Jeg kan godt ta det med utålmodighet, for jeg enig I at der jo United-fansen blant de verste I klassen, men det mener jeg man også har fått veldig god grunn til. For dette handler om antall ganger du har blitt svikta eller skuffa eller prøvd å være tålmodig, og aldri fått på en måte lønn for tålmodigheten din. Da. Du har alltid bare tenkt at greit, jeg stoler på at nå løser dette her, og så det du får servert, det Fellaini på deadline day. Og så det du får servert noen panikkjøp I siste liten som viser seg ikke slå ut I full blomst, eller noen spillere som på hell, som har vært skadet lenge. Så det jo en grunn til at man nå blir utålmodig mye fortere enn man kanskje bør. Og så det ingen grunn til å trykke panikknappen, men her det også uklarheten rundt budsjett, det oppkjøpet som vi fortsatt venter på en avklaring rundt. Så her det så mange usikkerhetsmomenter I tillegg til den vanlige skepsisen vi har på bakgrunn av erfaringen vi sitter med. Derfor skjønner jeg veldig godt at folk utålmodige og kanskje verst I klassen, men det jo en grunn til det.
Og så det jo ikke alt som går på en måte Manchester Uniteds vei. Du kan godt kritisere klubben fordi det ting som altså man visste at det her kom til å bli en vanskelig sommer. Hvorfor man ikke bedre forberedt? Vi har jo fått høre at Erik Ten Hag ville ha Harry Kane, og han ville ha Declan Rice. Ingen av de virker å ende opp I Manchester United I sommer, selv om ting kan endre seg fort. I tillegg så endrer keeper-situasjonen. Vi skal ta den mer I detalj etter hvert, men det som virka å være en sikker løsning ved at De Gea skulle få ny kontrakt, den ikke lenger like sikker. Keeper-situasjonen snudd på huet. Og I tillegg så alt svindyrt.
Ja, og dette jo det jo et vanvittig puslespill som skal løses da, og hvis Ten Hag som I utgangspunkt tenkte at den skal løses på denne måten her, vi henter en spiss og så henter vi en sentral midtbanespiller, og så ser vi deretter hva vi trenger og hva vi har å rutte med. Mens her ting snudd på hodet, fordi Kane ikke tilgjengelig, Osimhen virker ikke tilgjengelig, kanskje ikke Ramos det heller. Så blir det sånn, kanskje ikke De Gea eller United ville fortsette samarbeidet lenger likevel. Ja, da det keeper som første brio plutselig da. Og så går vi for plan C som kanskje Høylund, eller plan D det kanskje det han Og så skal det ha 100 millioner pund eller euro for han også. Så ryker det. Så det jo en grunn til at det blir omveltninger og eller endringer hele veien her da. Og det må være vanvittig frustrerende.
Vi ringer Andy Mitten for å høre hva som skjer og hvor frustrert han Okay, Andy, how are you?
I'm okay, thanks. I'm hoping that things quieten down a little bit, but all fine. I attended my last game on Sunday in Rotterdam, the Nations League final. Nearly fell asleep watching it. And that was the end of a season which started last July in Bangkok when Manchester United put 4 goals past Liverpool. A long, long season. And the next one starts, well, I set off for Oslo on the 9th of July. So it's coming soon. I'm going to stay in few days before in a fort on the Oslo Fjord. There's a hotel there. So I saw that. So I think my children might like that.
You've been on the podcast a few times now, Andy, and you're currently in Spain, not in Manchester, and you need the listeners need to get to know you a bit better. So can you explain why you're sometimes in Spain and sometimes in Manchester?
Well, I'm from Manchester. Most of my family are still in Manchester. My wife and children are in Spain. My wife's from Brazil. So for the last 20 years, I've divided my time between Barcelona and Manchester. So I go to about 85 football games per season. So I travel a lot. I'm in Manchester a lot. I go to all the United pre-season tours, European away games, lots of matches. So it sounds unusual, but it's my normal life now. And 2 things made it possible back then was the budget airlines, the cheap airlines, and the internet. Without either of them, it wouldn't have been possible. But I quite like it. I mean, Barcelona's a great city. It's a big football city, and footballers react differently when they know you're there. They're more interested. I remember spending a day interviewing Steven Gerrard in Barcelona, and suddenly you can give them something. You're not just asking them. They want to know about, Barca. What are these players like? And I do write about Barca a lot. So Jordi Cruyff, who's about to leave being the club's sports director, I interviewed him yesterday. He's not done any interviews since he left Barcelona, so the Spanish press are going to go crazy that he's giving it to me. But you know, if he obviously trusts me, doesn't he? So I've done that, and two great cities. You know, I love Manchester. Manchester's changed so much. I noticed a big change around the 2002 Commonwealth Games. In the 80s, Manchester was really struggling, that sort of post-industrialization. My father only had work 3 days a week. The city centre was pretty awful. But out of that came a really good music scene, a lot of creativity. And then in the 80s, Manchester United started becoming good and under Ferguson. Well, the 90s, really. The 80s were terrible under Ferguson. And there's been a wave which has been on ever since, really. Manchester United are hugely popular. Manchester City clearly adds to the appeal of Manchester. So if I mention anywhere in the world that I'm from Manchester, you'd get much more recognition than saying if I was from a similar sized city like Lyon in France, for example. I think the demographics and of Liverpool are punched well above the weight of the actual size of the place. So I've seen a lot of changes. Unfortunately, at Manchester United, I've seen a lot of changes for the worse under the Glazers. But I'm sure we're going to talk about the football side.
I think we are, because our DMs are packed with concern, Andy. What is happening? Why aren't United signing anyone? Is the Glazers crushing another transfer window for us? Is it all a bloody mess? Please give us something to hold on to, Andy.
Well, if I'm going to give you something to hold on to, Manchester United do have a budget to buy players like they did last year. And I remember exactly 1 year ago, okay? So I actually helped with Frenkie de Jong because I just did. And someone very senior at United said to me, the transfer window's just opened. This is like going into a disco at 9 p.m. There's still a long way to go. We're not going to spend all our money at 9 p.m. And that is also true now. I also spoke to another sports director very, very recently who said, if you've got money like Manchester United, you're in a strong position. You don't need to spend all your money. So I get the frustration. I totally get the idea that it's best to bring players in really early. But equally, agents were trying to take advantage of Manchester United last year because they know they've got money. So they're asking for ridiculous fees for themselves, for the player, and then you've got to negotiate with the club. So Mason Mount, for example, my understanding is he wants to join Manchester United. But the problem here, and I know this for a fact, is Chelsea are reluctant to sell to a direct rival. So these things don't get sorted out in 2 weeks. They just don't. Frenkie de Jong last year, Barca wanted rid of him. They wanted the money. But the player said, I don't want to go. I've signed a contract. So Ten Hag knows what he wants and who he wants. Does the ownership situation make it any easier? I do not think it does. United are saying it's business as usual. I find that hard to believe when you have this huge elephant in the room. Fans are getting really frustrated with what's going on, and they're seeing no signings. I would just urge a little bit of patience, because what happened in a couple of years ago, fans were going crazy because nobody had been signed, and United went and signed Donny van de Beek. And I remember speaking to someone on the coaching staff a week or so after, and they didn't really know where he was going to play. And I'm like, you've just paid 40 million more or less for a player, and you don't know where he's going to play. And it seemed to me that was a rushed signing because he was available, because he wasn't too expensive, and because he had good statistics. And was that the right thing to do in hindsight? Probably not. So I would trust Erik Ten Hag. I see fans saying, buy him, sell him. Why did we only get this for him? Ten Hag knows what he's doing. Equally, if the ownership situation is not sorted out, or he doesn't have some assurances, then that becomes a big problem as well. Manchester United cannot go into next season with the same team that finished this season. I spoke to Ten Hag for an hour in December about the need for a striker. We discussed names. Gonzalo Ramos was one of the names from Benfica. He really likes him. Just because you like something doesn't mean that you're going to get it. So I get the frustration. Social media makes this much worse. It's like, give me news now. But the world doesn't work like that. And it took me 7 months before I wrote a piece on Sunday where I said, look, this takeover is taking too long. It's just getting ridiculous now. And there's a lot of frustration in that. But I can't control that. I don't think the Glazers have ever been good. I think they're going to squeeze every last drop they can out of Manchester United. But it doesn't serve them well not to invest for next season. So I know this is a long answer, but I just think we have to be a little bit patient because fans have stopped being patient.
You mentioned Mount, you mentioned Ramos. We did the count in the podcast. Between January and June, more than 80 players were linked to United. What names do you reckon to be the front runners in Manchester, the red part, that is, at the moment?
Well, Mount definitely, because I've spoke to the people who want to sign him. So I know that for certain. And I've just told you what the situation is there. Ramos, I spoke to Ten Hag about him, but that was in December. So United will have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. 1 year ago, nobody was talking about Casemiro, Anthony, Christian Eriksen, Lisandro Martinez. And, the last transfer window was not a bad one. The problem with leaving it late is, did United overpay for Anthony? Probably. But it's difficult. A buying club does not control the market. But it's frustrating when you see other clubs seemingly acting much more quickly. But again, I spoke to a very high-level sports director who said, and sometimes it's good to get an outside view. Ten Hag has done the main thing already. He's put the building blocks in place. Manchester United was significantly better last season, and he just needs to add on top of that. So sometimes you can sort of ignore what happened last season. Last season was really encouraging on so many levels. My worry is that the ownership doesn't get sorted out and Ten Hag just has enough. I've had no evidence of that happening yet. And I get this frustration on social media, but I just do think fans have got to calm down a little bit. Everyone wants the Glazers gone. Everyone wants new owners. People are divided on who they want. I get that. But Manchester United are not briefing out and saying, we've got to sell because we need money. There's two other factors here. Financial fair play is a very real threat for Manchester United. I understand that there was a warning given in January. Not an official one, but, you're getting close to the wind. To 6 or 7 other Premier League clubs. And secondary, United need to sell some players. And United have not been very good at selling players. So who are they going to be? I think the two standouts would be Harry Maguire and Scott McTominay. Harry Maguire has been given no indication that Manchester United want to sell him. 0. He's got a contract. I got told that when United played in Newcastle, when we lost a few months ago, after the game, Scott McTominay walked up the tunnel and Amanda, Newcastle's main figurehead, said, "Hey, Scotty, great to see you." The person who told me that said they clearly knew each other. So if Scott McTominay was to go to a Newcastle for tens of millions, I wouldn't be surprised about that. And then you're seeing fringe players being sold. Zidane Iqbal, $1 million. Is that too much or too little? It's easy for me to scream and say, that's not enough. He's going to be the next Zidane. But we don't know the answer to that. Someone's going to make a call on that. And he was nowhere near the first team. And when he did play in the first team, in those friendlies in December, well, United were miles off. So talented young player, but it's hard to call it on a young player. Ten Hag is very good. but he needs to be backed. And truthfully, sat here talking on the 21st of June, I do believe United will bring players in. You have a situation where if United go for a striker, they say, okay, we want billion, zillion, billion. It would be stupid for United just to rush in and pay that. And it was put to me that if you've got money, you're in a strong position.
And that seems to be a big issue, and it has been for quite a few years now, that other clubs are demanding quite exaggerated fees for the players that United want. And since we're now talking to a journalist that speaks to sporting directors, we can ask you a question from Jonas. What can United do in order to fight those exaggerated fees that the clubs are demanding?
Negotiate well. 2 days ago. Well, there is a skill to negotiation, and there's a dark art to negotiation, and it's much more difficult because you cannot just be Alex Ferguson now and say, listen, son, I want you to come and play for my club. You've got to be sharp. And Manchester United have not been sharp enough, let's be honest. But you've got to cut through the bullshit as well. 2 days ago, an agent called me. This agent had a player at Juventus. But the agent said, Man United are watching my player. I want you to write it. Definitely in interest. And I checked it out at Man United, and they said it's absolutely not true. And I believe the purple. As a journalist, if I would have written a clickbait story saying Man United are interested in this player from Juventus, that would have gone viral, wouldn't it? But I don't think it's true. So United it was put to me a year ago, United have lost the ability to do the dark arts in transfer, the stuff which is a bit underhand. And I get that. But it's also difficult being United. For the women's team, a contract was drawn up to sign Alessia. All done. The club thought it was agreed, and suddenly she moved somewhere else. So maybe United need to be a bit more bastard-like and a bit harder. And Honor, who was probably the best women's team player, she wanted to go back to play for Barcelona, but she also wanted more money. And United were not prepared to pay that. Should they have done? It's very easy to say, give them what they ask for. Well, if you do that, you end up with Bastian Schweinsteiger on a huge amount of money. You end up paying completely over the odds for Alexis Sanchez. It didn't work, that model. I mean, this was a headache from Ed Woodward saying we can buy anybody we want. To be fair to Richard Arnold, he is letting football people make football decisions. This isn't Ed Woodward working with agents like it was. Saying, Mr. Van Gaal, would you like Radamel Falcao? We can do this. Mr. Solskjaer, would you like Cristiano Ronaldo? We can do this tomorrow. I think both of them transfers led to huge problems. Huge problems. So if Man United are going to do it a little differently, and did it differently last summer, and I don't think Casemiro was a disaster, nor Lisandro Martinez. I actually think Anthony's very talented as a player. I've got doubts about him, in terms of the company he keeps. Malacia, okay, we've seen enough there. Christian Eriksen, would we have taken him on a free? I think, yeah, absolutely. He's a good player. So we've got to put some trust into the manager here. And if you get into the end of the transfer window, no players have come in, then that's the time to panic. Years ago, Manchester United didn't sign anyone, and at the last minute paid too much money for Marouane Fellaini. That was a complete disaster.
We'll let you enjoy the Spanish sun in a moment, Andy, but let's finish off with what perhaps is the biggest story at the moment. You have written a very interesting piece on De Gea in our magazine. What has changed in the last couple of months? Why isn't this situation solved yet when everyone knew that it has to be solved?
Money. So that piece that I wrote for your magazine, I spoke to so many people as part of that piece. There's a lot of detail in there that people in the UK do not know. And that might not be what everybody wants to hear. You know, I spoke to several top-level goalkeeping coaches, and actually, they were pretty complimentary about David De Gea. And De Gea has become a 50-50 player. I said this in the article. 50% of fans want him to go. So I think if it's about money, maybe Saudi Arabia, suddenly you've got interest from there. But I said this to somebody in Spain yesterday who knows a lot. And that person said, his wife is a Spanish pop star. She needs to be in Europe. David De Gea doesn't need any money. You know, it was put to me, and this was put throughout the piece that I did for you. United are confident that he will sign. Not going to earn as much money as his last contract, which was too much money. And I think Manchester United will buy another goalkeeper to push David De Gea for the number one position, because as I explained in the article in great detail, he hasn't been pushed. And there are certain things that at the time I thought were true, like Sergio Romero is the best number 2 around. Actually, he wasn't capable of playing every week. And David De Gea knew that. So was David De Gea really pushed? The answer is no. So I think United will sign a goalkeeper. It's a shame Tom Heaton's not a bit younger, because he's a great lad. He's a great professional. Buckland's gone to Rangers. Good luck to him. I think United will sign a goalkeeper. Dean Henderson, unlikely. He fell out with too many people. So yeah, United are looking at goalkeepers.
And you think De Gea will stay as well?
I do, but I can't guarantee that. I don't think the decision's been made. I think he would probably have nothing that will be, okay. I spoke to someone who knows far more about Spanish football than I do, once again. And he said to me, and this is a person at the top level, he said to me, David De Gea will not match the money he gets in England, in Spain, at any club at all. He's not close to being the national goalkeeper. He earns more money than any other Spanish goalkeeper. There are no openings for him in Spain. Okay, so where does he go? It would have to be a left field sort of Saudi, unless you get a crazy, PSG type, which we had with Ander Herrera. Imagine now, after I say all this, he goes to sign for like Real Sociedad tomorrow. I've just given you, I speak to good people, and I'm passing on that information.
Thank you so much for your insight, and hopefully we'll speak again during the summer.
It's a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to seeing people in Oslo.